Acuity is the sharpness of vision. How well do we see? And there's two major issues if your vision isn't perfect, which usually means 20/20, but you have nearsightedness and farsightedness. I am nearsighted, a condition in which nearby objects are seen more clearly than distant objects because distant objects are in front of the retina, which I'll have a picture that will show you what that means in a minute. Farsightedness, a condition in which faraway objects are seen more clearly than near objects because the image of the near object is focused behind the retina. All right, so what does that mean? So here we go. Here's a great picture of this. Here's normal, okay? So normal's over here. So here you have the picture of the candle. It gets sent into the eye. Everything here is operating normally, and then it gets transposed to the back of the eye, and it's hitting right where it's supposed to, that information, so that the brain can interpret it perfectly. Now here you have nearsighted. So when the candle flame is interpreted by this eye, what's happened is it can be the usually it's the lens, different things. As you age, your eyes can change quite drastically. And some of you, they've already started to change. Some of us are just born genetically with eyes that are going to go earlier. For me, it happened my senior year of college when all of a sudden I couldn't see the board that the professor was writing on the board, and I realized I have no idea what that guy's writing. And so I found myself constantly moving up further and further until I was the guy in the front row. Okay, but for usually no love of the subject, but just because I couldn't see until I got glasses. Okay, but anyway, I wear contacts now. But anyway, when this happens, when nearsighted vision occurs, you can see how this picture is now projected. It's actually finishing being projected in front of the retina, which is going to cause problems visually. And then, of course, farsighted vision occurs when the way all this stuff works, it's actually projecting so that your eye would need to be bigger, and the picture needs to be is wanting to be perfectly projected when further behind where the eye ends. Cool. So again, here's the rods and cones. I know I already explained them, but here's just a slide on it. Okay, so don't really want to repeat myself, but you can read that. All right, so retina's reaction to light. Optic nerve. Nerve that carries neural impulses from the eye to the brain. Talked about that. Blind spot. We all have blind spots in each eye. Okay, a point at which the optic nerve leaves the eye, creating a blind spot because there are no receptor cells located there. There's a great picture on page 203 that asks you to look at a dot and hold the book about a foot away from your face. And when you follow the directions, you realize that the picture, if you look at the dot a certain way, the picture that's with the dot starts to disappear, and that's your blind spot. And that is why we have two eyes. Believe it or not, our eyes are put into our heads that they're not perfect. They're slightly different, and they tend to focus inward. So our eyes tend to focus this way. And we'll do a lot of this, more of this discussion in perception, but that allows one eye to cover for the blind spot of the other eye, and when that information is sent into the brain pulls it all together and goes, thank you, eye, that, this eye, I'll put that with the information that I don't have for the other eye, and vice versa. All right, fovea is the central point in the retina around which the eye's cones cluster, and this is where the picture is being focused, is on the fovea. And here we have a nice picture of what's going on in the eye. So here's the eye, okay? Light entering the eye, here's number one, light entering the eye triggers photochemical reaction in rods and cones at the back of the retina. Photochemical means basically the energy of the light creates a chemical reaction in the part of the eye that starts the neural process of interpreting the information that's out there. Okay? Chemical reaction in turn activates what's called bipolar cells. This is number two. They're cells that are in between the cones and ganglion cells. So it's just a series of different cells that communicate to one another. We don't need to know more than that at this level. If you're going to go become an eye doctor or an optometrist, or whatever, if you're going to go to med school, I'm sure you need to know this in much greater detail, but for our purposes, we don't need to know that, okay? And then 3, the bipolar cells then activate the ganglion cells, the axons of which converge to form the optic nerve. This nerve transmits information to the visual cortex in the brain's occipital lobe. So now we're getting back to, why did we learn all those parts of the brain in Chapter 2? Well, now you're seeing how it connects to why that's the part of the brain that has to do with vision, okay? So you can see all of these right here start forming their little strands that form bigger and bigger strands. It's like a rope, and when it gets thick enough, it turns into the optic nerve. Pretty cool stuff, okay? All right, on this one, this is just a chart. Again, I think it's in your book, showing you really how many, what we have in our eye as far as cones and rods. We have 120 million cones in each eye and 6 million rods. So you can see, again, coming back to that explanation, why we prefer the day? Because color matters to us. Rods, we just don't have enough of them for nighttime to be our favorite time to be out and about, okay? Location, where they are located in the retina, and their sensitivity, and then color sensitive. So that's just, it's all self-explanatory. Got that. Now, this is interesting, feature detectors. And I have a video, most of which is kind of boring, but this part's kind of cool. I'll try to show it to you in class. They have nerve cells that in the brain respond to specific features, okay, shapes, angles, movements. And that is how we start to interpret, for instance, how do we know an A is an A and not an H? Because certain feature detectors go off based on the angles that we see. An A has this angle with it, an H has this angle with it, okay? So, to be more specific, they actually take this guy and they put electrodes into his brain, I think it is, and they're actually showing that when his eye moves across lines like this or lines like that or any of these, okay, different parts of the brain go off to say, oh, that's a straight vertical line. Great. I have to do this right in the middle of bells. All right. Or it could be a horizontal line or what is it, 45-degree lines. All those things, how we figure that out is based on what's known as feature detectors. And that's very simplistic, straight lines, okay? Gets more complex when you get into certain shapes or movements, okay? So here, this is why you can kind of fool yourself. I just had a moment there of totally forgot what I was going to say. This is called the Necker cube, and again, it's in the book. But basically, the same image is going to be projected to your retina as you look at it. It's not changing. But based on how you look at it, if you stare at it long enough, how you see it, how you perceive this cube changes. And what they've been able to figure out is as you perceive it differently, they are showing that different parts of your brain are being activated at the different times that it switches back and forth in your brain. So it's kind of cool that you're not. It's the same picture. It's not moving around or anything. But every time I blink, I'm blinking and it's going back and forth on me. Okay. And for a lot of you'll be able to see the same thing based on what part of your brain's being activated. So cool. That's how the Necker cube works. Our brain also has a tendency to want to finish out, basically create structure where there isn't structure. Simply put, as you stare at these three Pac-Man shaped figures, we don't see sort of three Pac-Men, well, you can, sort of talking to each other in a circle or a triangle there. But if you stare at it long enough, our brain is creating structure where there really isn't any. it looks like a white triangle is laying on top of 3 pink circles if you look at it right. And again, that comes into what part of our brains are being lit up or being activated by feature detectors. Okay? Now this is cool. Parallel processing. This I cannot emphasize enough. Us computers, this is where the computer versus human being brain, hard drive or CPU, what's better contest comes into play here. Computers kill us at serial processing. That's why we want computers to do calculations. They can do these huge, massive calculations that would take us sometimes months, years to figure out. They can do them, bam, super fast. Okay, and that's why we're able to use these computers to do so many different things now today, and so fast because our brains don't work like that, and it's very important for us. Now, this is where AI comes in. Why am I? Sorry, I looked like I was skipping, and I didn't know if it was happening to you guys or just to me. Anyway, parallel processing. We as human beings kill computers as far as parallel processing goes. That is why when they talk about this world of robots and AI, artificial intelligence, or the kind of thing that you see on the Terminator, how close are we to that with robots? We're at, I don't even know if the word is infancy stage of building robots that would be anything like a human being, because what the computers that the basic robots use, they can only do one thing. They do it very well and very fast, but they can do one thing. That's why we have like vacuum robots. Was that iRobot? Is that the name of the vacuum cleaner? Or that's the company. But basically, nobody looks at that thing and goes, oh, wow, I can have a conversation with it, or it's interpreting all this other stuff. Basically, it's moving about the floor, and it is programmed to take in information and use the broom or sweeper or whatever it has on it to clean the floor based on very specific criteria that's put into the CPU. It doesn't know what it's picking up. It can't sit there and go, well, I shouldn't suck up this thing that's on the floor because the person who owns the house might want it. Maybe I should leave that or something. It's not good at that. It's told to either suck up all the stuff on the floor or not. Okay, to go to the next level where it's having to interpret information before it decides whether or not it's going to suck up the dirt or not. That's much more complicated. And that's only 2 things. Okay, but our brains are super good at having sort of several, I guess you could think of it as CPUs lined up one next to each other, all working in concert to create a full image. And here, like the bird. When we see a bird, we don't first see color, then see motion, then see form of the bird, and then see depth. It all happens at one time, instantaneously. And that's what gives us the depth of the bird, the wholeness of the bird. So we enjoy, for instance, some people, bird watching. Okay? You can see here that a computer or a robot would need to have sort of a separate CPU for each one of these type of activities that it's trying to interpret. Then it would need another CPU to bring it all together and make it one. Okay, so again, very far from this whole artificial intelligence thing from being where everybody thinks it's going to be one day, but who knows? All right, so this is just a picture showing you how it all works, the scene, the retinal detection, and then the feature detections, and then abstraction. Here, when you get over to this right here, you have the abstraction. The brain's higher level cells respond to combined information from feature detector cells. Now we're starting to get into perception. So here, over here, we have sensation. Now we're getting into perception, and then of course this has got to be perception once we get there. All right, and we have now the trichromatic theory, or three-color theory. It's also known as the Young-Helmholtz theory. These are two professors, two researchers who came up with this. We have three different retinal color receptors: red, green, and blue. Probably the easiest way for me to explain this is to read again from the text here. It's on page 209 that I'm reading. So basically, we have these three colors, and when we stimulate combinations of these cones, we see other colors. For example, there are no receptors especially sensitive to yellow. Okay, so notice there's no yellow on here. Yet when both red and green sensitive cones are stimulated, we see yellow. Okay. Now, if you're trying to make sense of this by thinking back to mixing paints, you're not thinking in the right context here. Mixing paints is subtractive color mixing because it subtracts wavelengths from the reflected light. Okay? The more colors you mix in, the fewer wavelengths can be reflected back. So mixing blue and yellow paint leaves only green to be reflected back. Combining red, blue, and yellow means no light waves will be reflected back, and you either get brown or black. But when you mix light, now light's different. As Young-Helmholtz did, it is additive color mixing because the process adds wavelengths and thus increases light. Combining red, blue, and green light makes white light. Okay, so it's kind of a flipped scenario. If you were to combine all the colors with paint, you end up with black. When you combine all the colors with light, you get white light. Okay. Colorblind. People who suffer red-green colorblindness have trouble perceiving the number within the design. In case you're wondering, the number is, I'll give you a second to figure it out, 74. Okay. Most color deficient people are not actually colorblind. They simply lack functioning red-green sensitive cones. Their vision is dichromatic, two-color, instead of trichromatic, making it difficult to distinguish red and green, as in this figure. Okay? Now we have the opponent process theory. Opposing retinal processes enable color vision. What tends to happen here is, what this simply is trying to get you to understand is that we have some receptor sites in our eyes, again the cones, that are wired to detect, when they detect red, green is off. And when they detect green, red is off. And with blue and yellow and so on and so forth, that's why they're called opponent colors. Okay, and so it's a very specific way our eyes are set up to detect the colors of the world, and that's why certain colors you can't have a mix of. You won't have a reddish green. There is no such thing as a reddish green. You either see red or you see green. So when you see these, when you see one, you don't see the other. And this is kind of what creates after images. And let me show you this next one. Okay. All right. Stare at the flag for, I think it's 30 seconds or a minute, 30 seconds to a minute. Just stare at it. Try not to blink as little as possible. And then look at the black dot to the right and blink. Okay. And what you should see is, the flag here that we see, you'll see the same flag in an after image, but it'll be red. All right, so you're seeing the opponent process after image. So what you're seeing, you're tiring out your eye's ability, the receptors for the colors of green and yellow and black, and you'll see your opponent's colors once you stare at the dot. And the last slide for this video, color constancy, perceiving familiar objects as having consistent color, even if changing illumination alters the wavelengths reflected by the object. To put in a better and an easier way to understand, you will see basically, we don't ever see color sort of in a void. Different colors look can change based on other colors that are around them. And in the text on page 211, you have the cube where they have different, what looks like different types of yellow dots on the cube, and in the center of each dot are blue dots. At first, it looks like each blue dot is slightly different colored. Some are darker than others. In reality, the blue dots are all exactly the same, but the way our brain interprets it is different because of the surrounding colors cause us to perceive it differently. So that is color constancy. All right. See you next time.